First of all, thank all of you for attending the session. Hopefully you will be smiling. It will be somewhat interactive. I will ask a number of questions to make sure that what I'm saying is also on par with what's happening with your organizations. So please don't be shy, because clearly I'm not. And I hope that you'll find some of this informative. It is pretty much based on my experiences with customers as they move to the cloud and some of the challenges that they have had and some of the issues and concerns they've had. So there are three main topics that we are going to go through for this lovely 40 some odd next minutes. Why should organizations such as you move to the cloud? How do I get there? What public cloud provider should I move to? And finally, what challenges do I have trying to get to where I want to be? So I have some metrics, I have some studies, I have some customer experiences that I want to share with all of you for the next 40 some odd minutes. Sound like a plan, everyone? That would be yes, Karen. Come on, people. We're going to get that momentum flowing. So first things first, who here works for an organization that is considering moving to the cloud? Who is not? Okay, it's either yes or no. So yes, no. All right, that's a little better. Now I got complete participation. So there are a number of reasons why customers or companies are considering moving to the cloud, but analysts are saying that roughly 90% of companies are. Well, we actually had a little bit more than 90% participation saying that they definitely are. So this metric is still valid, at least from what the analysts are saying. So why are you guys moving to the cloud? Anyone? Yes. Agility. Great answer. Anyone else? Costs. Anyone else? Data center space. All valid reasons why companies are moving. And in fact, the top three are cost, agility or speed, and being able to scale. So there are a number of companies out there that fall into one or more of these categories. So depending on your business, you have different reasons why you need to get to the cloud. I will also offer that sometimes it's just political, but for the most part, what I'm seeing, companies are trying to close down data centers, or at least the data center footprint, because it really is starting to cost a lot of money to keep up all of these resources in the on-prem environments, and a lot of them already are filled up. I can't tell you how many customers I deal with that have data centers that are completely full, so they can't even bring in new servers. And so their business is growing so much that they need more resources. And the only way to do that is to try and become a little bit more agile and to go into the public cloud. But there's other challenges with that, which I'll table for a second. One company, actually a gas company that we probably all leverage putting gas in our cars unless we're completely hybrids these days, but they were concerned about security. They're very conservative, and they wanted to get sensors on a lot of their systems. They wanted their pumps on reservoirs, on refineries, and they started getting all of this data, and they wanted to process all of this data, but they didn't have enough resources, compute power to do the analytics, and they didn't have enough storage to actually keep all of that data. So they moved to the cloud because they need to be able to get the horsepower and the storage for large amounts of data and analytics in the public cloud. So what do the analysts say why people most move to the public cloud? Well, predominantly it's because of the on-premise costs. And although the servers that we're buying for on-prem are getting less and less expensive, the reality is it's not just about the server itself. And who here actually has servers that are completely maximized from a resource perspective, right? Even today, the utilizations are so low that you're not even maximizing your investment. So why are we spending all this money on on-prem resources when we're not maximizing the resources we spend, and we're not getting, we're we're wasting all of our money. In fact, the analysts say that the minute you buy storage and the minute you buy hardware, a third of it is wasted from a compute perspective, and 40% is wasted from a storage perspective. So think about that for a second. If you buy $1 million worth of storage, you can take $400,000 of it and throw it right away. Who wants to do that? I'll happily grab it. You can give me the $400,000. But that's an astronomical number, because as the companies that we're dealing with are growing, they're trying to buy more and more. And when companies have billion-dollar storage costs for the storage they need, that just doesn't make sense, right? So the reality is everybody's trying to figure out other ways to be able to leverage compute and resources that are not on-prem. Okay, let's take an example of a bank on the East Coast. So for you guys, I cover all North America and I cover all technology verticals, so I have a nice cross-section of different types of companies, because like I said, everybody's company is different, right? But some of the things are the same. So this company on the East Coast, they do a lot of peak processing, but they didn't have enough workload, or they didn't have enough resources to handle their peak processing as they were growing, so they would burst into the cloud. Because for them, economically, they can burst in the cloud, leverage the resources, and then once they're done, they come back to just completely on-prem. So the model works perfectly because they're not overspending on those resources for on-prem, but they're still getting all the processing that they need done and the analytics done in a short period of time. So that's a classic example of how they're able to reduce or keep costs low from their on-prem perspective. So let's talk about, we're going to migrate to the cloud. How do we do that? Where do we even start when it comes to migrating, right? Well, there are some different options to actually migrate to the cloud. The first, and usually what companies jump to, is known as lift and shift. So in essence, you have resources identified on-prem, and say, let's just take, you have 4 or 5 VMs, and they're 2x4s, right? 2 CPUs, 4 gig of memory, or whatever. And you want to just take that exact same resource and move it from on-prem into the cloud. So you're just lifting what you have, moving into the cloud. However, this doesn't always be cost effective, because you might not be leveraging all the resources, the 2x4s, when you're on-prem. So if you go to the cloud, which sometimes is more expensive, what are you doing? You're wasting money, because now you have to pay by hour, right? Alternately, you may not be running on the same piece of hardware. So now you got to worry about, if I'm on-prem, I know what kind of performance benchmarks I'm running, I know what kind of hardware I'm running, but when I go to the cloud, I'm dependent on the cloud provider. So you might not necessarily be optimized, and you might have lower costs or higher costs. So be careful when you're doing lift and shift, because you might not be optimized and you could be wasting money. The other one is more, you want to optimize first. So you optimize it on-prem, and then you move to the cloud, which is obviously a little bit more cost-effective, but potentially could take a little more time. And third is, well, I don't even care, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to guess. But I will tell you, as most of you know, depending on what cloud provider you have, and most companies try and look at a hybrid cloud model, you'll find that it's very different instance sizes and very different performance depending on which cloud provider you're in. So there's all kinds of things to worry about when you're doing a migration. So let's think about how companies have already started to try and do migrations. Well, what's actually happening? When companies are being forced to go to the cloud or want to go to the cloud, they think, we got to do it, it's the next fad, let's go, let's go, let's go. I want that new iPhone, I want that new Galaxy, I'm going to go grab it. But how many times do you have situations where you go upgrade and get the new phone, and then it's not compatible with an app or something like that, right? So when they go to the cloud, they realize that they don't know really what they're doing, and it's not really cost effective, and now I might be in a little over my head. So they rush to get to the cloud, and then once they're in the cloud, they kind of stall, right? Because they're like, this isn't what we thought, we're not getting the performance we thought, maybe our bills are coming too high, maybe we should slow down a little bit and rethink what we're doing. So there's a number of reasons why companies have seen that their movement and migration to the cloud starts up fast and then slows down significantly, and or they stop and actually come back on-prem, or they never recover and they just have to throw in the towel. So let's think about some analysts that say, the IDC says roughly 40% of companies will actually migrate their applications back from the cloud to on-prem. All right, so here's the scary truth, right? By 2020, which ironically is now next year, can we believe that? 45% of organizations that perform our lift and shift to cloud IaaS without proper cost optimization will be over-provisioned by 55% and will overspend by 70% in their first 18 months. So when you start dealing with millions of dollars, that's a lot of money. And in fact, we have, I think it's my next slide, I hope it's my next slide. We have companies, nope, next slide. We have companies that we've dealt with, multiple companies, where they go to the cloud and they think they have a handle on what to expect, and then all of a sudden they get a cloud bill and they almost go out of business. So I'm stealing my own thunder, dun, 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 dun. But later on I actually have a slide that talks a little bit about that, but it's not just like one company, it's becoming more and more prolific throughout the number of organizations in the US. Okay, so how do we solve some of these problems, right? Trying to be a good team player here, you should leverage a solution that actually can focus on doing the optimization of your environment prior to moving to the cloud, and or you can accurately size the right instance types when you migrate to the public cloud. Or you can accurately size the instance types when you go to the public cloud, so that way you can get a better handle on what the costs will be. Now, when you are in the public cloud, optimization is still something that you're going to need to continue to do, but you have to think about it not just in terms of on a day or week or month basis. Now you're going to have to start looking at things on a power schedule or hourly basis, because a lot of the public cloud providers will start charging you by the hour. And if you have resources that are idle, that are getting charged by the idle, they're getting compounded and you're wasting a lot of money. So ideally, you're going to want to start looking like when you get to a public cloud provider to look at a number of different things you're not used to looking at on-prem. In addition, if you're specifically with Amazon, you can have reserve instances, spot instances, on-demand instances that all cost different amounts. So make sure that you can leverage the different types of technologies that are offered you and to try and figure out how to save money. So let's give an example of a cloud migration simulation. And in this particular case, we're not just moving resources, we're actually moving or trying to migrate an entire business service or application. So instead of just individual infrastructure, oh, this VM, right? You're saying my bill pay service, my online insertcustomer.com online application business, right? And what we're doing here is the application might have a number of different servers and instance types down here, and you can understand the instance type and the performance currently on-prem. And what we show is for the top 3 major cloud providers, which of the cloud providers is economically better for you, and more importantly, what kind of instance type should I expect to leverage in the cloud to optimize my spend and make sure I can guarantee performance. So this way, you now know that, hey, if I go from on-prem to the cloud, I know it's going to be more cost-effective and I'm going to guarantee my performance. Then once it's in there, then you're going to have to worry about continuing to optimize. Make sense? Awesome. Okay. So what kind of value can solutions like this bring to your organization, right? Well, for one, ideal world is you have some type of discovery solution that's discovering your applications and mapping them back to the business services, in which case you get that concept of a business service that you can do historical trending, modeling, capacity planning on, and more importantly, doing that migration. And by having a solution like that, you can reduce by 80% the effort that you have in trying to classify or define an application. You also can reduce the amount of resources needed for those applications because you're now able to understand the mapping, you're now able to understand the performance and what to expect if it goes to the cloud. And finally, you're going to be streamlining your people's time to make them much more efficient because they can actually act on the data versus trying to leverage spreadsheets and correlate all kinds of data from different sources. It's all going to be together. So what other challenges do I have in the public cloud? So one, migrate, to be or not to be? That is the question. The answer is, not all applications really should be migrated to the public cloud. So it's important to understand what the applications are and whether or not even moving to the public cloud is going to be cost effective or impact your performance. And when I say cost effective, there are hidden costs when going to the cloud, which include storage and accessing data and pulling data back down from the cloud, right? So make sure you understand what those applications are doing because the Amazons of the world have hidden charges that you might not really know. There's a company that works, a government agency in the East, that they got a very large bill from a cloud provider. And they said, I want to know why this bill is so high. Give me details about what this bill is. So Amazon gives them 800 pages. There you go, Doug. It's all in there. But you look at the bill and you're trying to dissect the bill and these little tiny line items, a 0.01 cent here and whatever, and it takes a long period of time to try and figure out. Another company did that same thing, and it took 2 people 2 weeks to actually decipher what that 800 pages were. Does that sound like that's something you want to do? I certainly don't want to do that. So being able to, one, get visibility into your spend is important, but also understanding, what are these applications and should they migrate to the cloud? So cost is also a big factor. Like I mentioned, it could be hidden costs, the actual costs. Just get a handle on what you're actually signing up for when you go to the cloud. Yes, sir. Hold on 1 second.
Hello? Okay. What I don't understand is that I thought that outsourcing and cloud services should be the same thing. So when someone goes in outsourcing, he does an agreement, he knows what he has to pay for, what the service levels has to be. So there's really no surprise with the bill. So I don't understand why there should be a surprise here.
Well, in my experience, my customer's experience, in theory, you're correct. The reality is not so much. As more and more cloud services get spun up and if more and more ways of accessing the data come up, you're going to find they're going to start charging for more things. In fact, Oracle has their own version of a cloud, right? Oracle is starting to try and increase the cost of running their on-prem instances to try and force companies to move to the cloud. And if Oracle instances are not in the Oracle cloud, they're going to charge a premium for it. So there's all kinds of skeeving ways that different public cloud providers are trying to go out and charge more things for the resources that should be just a flatline baseline cost. And all I'm trying today is be aware of it and get some visibility into it because it's really important. And I think maybe it's my next slide. We'll see. I have an example of a company that got a shocking bill. But it's not the next slide. So we'll get there eventually. It's like that dangling little carrot. Oh, question. Hold on.
I was thinking to myself that what you have to be or not to be, migrate or no migrate, to me, it's almost like you do need to do some research because, like when I got my mortgage, I had a choice between fixed rates and variable rates. And in the cloud, you have such a choice. You can have it by usage, or you can have it by fixed amount. You end up paying a little bit more for fixed because you don't have the flexibility. And nowadays with Kubernetes, you can have even a heck of a lot more flexibility. So it's like, to me, it's like you have to do some homework before you even make the decision as to who you're going to go with.
Sorry. I told you guys this would be entertaining. I should be a stand-up comedian. Not. Anyway, so that's a great statement, and absolutely, and to make sure to try and do your research or be informed and get visibility into your costs is really important. The challenge is that it seems to me that a lot of these costs keep changing. A lot of new services are being offered, and there's so much competition for your dollars and your spend that anything's possible. But you're right, try and stay informed. But it's not easy. That's why a tool is helpful, because we take care of that for you. Plus, we can translate the bill to make sure you know what to expect. All right, so quote on the screen, scary truth. 80% of organizations will initially overshoot their cloud infrastructure budgets due to lack of cost optimization, governance, or cloud spend commitments. This is the money slide, I bet. Yes. This technology / education company, they were spending $200 to $300% more than they anticipated spending in the public cloud. So if they're a small company, this means not so much, right? But they expected a $3 million bill and they got a $32 million bill. That's gonna hurt your wallet. Think about that. $3 million to $32 million. That could put companies out of business, right? So when you think about rushing to the cloud, you probably really have to focus on, what does this mean to my organization and how much is this going to cost me? It's not just, I'm just going to go over there, everything's going to be fine. It's kind of like how, we're going to go VMware because we're going to fix our server problem. And then all of a sudden we had server sprawl. Now we have VMware sprawl, so let's go to the cloud. Well, guess what? A whole bunch of VMs in the cloud is going to create a lot of bills, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. And you want to keep your job, don't you? We don't want to waste all our money on Amazon. So just be aware of the fact that the cloud is definitely agile. I'm not saying don't go there, but you certainly have to keep up with what is possible and what it's going to cost, what the opportunity cost is of going to the cloud. So ask yourself this question: should I go to the cloud, or should I keep some of my applications on-prem? Not saying they all have to stay on-prem. I'm not saying don't go to cloud, but just be educated and knowledgeable about what you're thinking of migrating. Okay, so how do you control your spend and your budgets? Right, now that we're in the cloud, now that we're trying to understand what is being utilized in the cloud, right? Let's get some perspective, get some visibility into what I have out there, how it's being leveraged. Am I optimizing my investment, right? To be able to control my spend so I don't run into any type of issue. Now, ways you can do that is tying budgets to the applications and business services that you have running in the cloud, and tracking those budgets from quarter to quarter to make sure that you don't have overspending going on or underspending going on, and so you can make sure you keep ahead of your cloud spend. Secondly, certainly you can make sure to get view and visibility into your business services and the costs that those business services are happening in the cloud to identify potential other optimization opportunities. I have seen by a lot of, in particular, one very large retail company that they go to the cloud, right? And they have these business services in the cloud, but then all of a sudden something changes and some of the resources that they migrated are no longer being used. Some are. So say my business service has 10 different VMs on it. 8 of them are now under 5% idle. The other 2 are still carrying a load. Well, the reality is you're still spending the same amount whether or not all 10 of those VMs were getting used or not. So maybe you could consider either reclaiming or allocating resources to those 8 VMs in order to maximize your dollar from a cost perspective. But getting that visibility and understanding how things are changing over time is important. Because once you get to the cloud, it's not like on-prem where, okay, you paid for the server, so whether you use it or not, you have it. You can easily turn on and off VMs in the cloud. And more importantly, if you know you're going to be leveraging resources for a long period of time, start buying some reserve instances, for instance. But again, track them over time to make sure you're getting the actual value out of those reserve instances you bought. So there's all kinds of things to look at. When we're talking about cost optimization itself, this is where, like I mentioned, looking at those VMs that are now idle and reclaiming, looking at the ones that are now over allocated and resizing. You can leverage different types of automation tools to help you with that. Also, again, start looking at power schedules. So if I have VMs that are only running backups at night, but doing nothing during the day, turn them off during the day. Turn them back on an hour before you're going to need them, or whatever. If you have apps that are running during the day and not at night because they're only used by employees, turn them off because you're paid by the hour. So think about if I can turn off VMs even half the time, I can save half my costs. And that's a pretty large number if you're talking a couple thousand VMs in the cloud, right? Yes. So what kind of value does this offer all of you? One, if you can see a reduction in cloud spend, that means you're saving money. When our experience in leveraging a solution like ours will help you reduce your public cloud spend by up to 40%. 40%. So if we had that $32 million cloud bill, I just realized I'm going to do math in my head that I might not know 40% of 32. I can do 40% of 30, but no, whatever. You got the pick. Funny laugh, haha, haha, haha. I know, yes. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate that. 12.8. See, a lot of squirrel. We can help save you 40% of cloud spend. So what else can we do? We also can help increase staff efficiency by 50%. Why? Because one, you're now able to get a better handle of what you currently are spending, and we can project forward and forecast forward what your spend will be based on how you're growing. And then because you'll have that, you'll be able to be much more efficient on the other things you need to do for your day job. And finally, it's going to take roughly, we'll reduce the effort to analyze a lot of your cloud bills and utilizations by up to 70% because we have all that information at your fingertips. So it's very easy to get a handle on what's going on in your organization, the performance of the applications that are running in the cloud, and how much they're costing you. So, governance. The problem with the cloud is that anyone can spin up things anytime they want, right? So unless you have some set policies in place to say you could only leverage these size VMs or these size servers, then you run the risk of having people spin up much larger VMs in your environment, and then you're going to have a premium to pay when the bill comes. So even BMC at our organization, in our development organization, we limit the size of some of the VMs that our developers can leverage in the cloud, because if you go over what we specify, it means we're going to have much more astronomical numbers than what we really need. And a lot of times they spin them up and then need to spin them down, but still, you want to control your spend. So having policies to govern what you want to leverage in your organization is also very important. One other issue that companies worry about, especially, perhaps the IRS, government agencies, banks, are worried about migrating to the cloud is security, right? If I can get hacked on a server, if I can get, exposed to a number of different types of viruses to my on-prem environment, who's to say someone can't find some backdoor into AWS and then corrupt all my servers in the cloud? So security is another big topic that you want to worry about when you go into the public cloud. In fact, a lot of cloud providers, they'll do some basic security, but they won't do scans or they won't do a lot of monitoring. So you want to make sure that you're able to understand what the security implications might be if you were to go to the cloud and take actions to try and secure your cloud, whether it's internal or external, so you don't get hacked and you don't have potential vulnerabilities. So it's important to have some technologies or software out there that can do vulnerability scanning and understand where you potentially have some weaknesses. So there was a company that did a scan with our solution, and they looked at one AWS account and they identified, or one AWS account with 1,100 different services, and they identified 233 servers that had high-risk policy violations. They had 148 cloud services that were non-compliant, and they were able to only have 4 remediations in under 10 minutes. So pretty scary that this company had that many potential problems, and they didn't even realize it until they ran a solution or ran a product to look. So just be careful. So let's just summarize a little bit of what we discussed so far, right? When you're going to go to the cloud, because I'm sure at least 90% of you are, if not all, be prepared. Do your research, sir, like you said, do your research. Understand what options you have for public cloud providers. Understand what implications it is to go to the cloud. Understand what the cost is to move to different public cloud. It is complicated to go to the public cloud, but you're not alone, and there are a number of tools by a number of different cloud providers and vendors that can help you get there. Just make sure you get the right tool for your needs, right? There's a lot of marketing collateral that says the same thing. Make sure you look at the solution and know what the tool can actually do, but you're not alone, and we're all in this together. Yes, Doug. Hold on.
All right. So one of the kickbacks that we're getting from solution architects is they don't want us collecting data because it costs dollars to move data back and forth between the cloud. So are your customers using like CloudWatch data, using that? Or, ideally, we've read a number of white papers that suggest we should just do the same kind of monitoring, same kind of performance that we do on-prem for anything we put in the cloud. But we're getting a lot of kickback for that. I'd like to put an agent out there and get OS level metrics from whatever's out.
Great question. So CloudWatch, if you turn CloudWatch on, then you can get some additional memory metrics and storage metrics. By default, I believe CPU metrics come through without turning and enabling it on. If you don't turn on CloudWatch, because that is a cost, then leverage one of your other monitoring technologies, like our agent or someone else's agent. Check your contract, because certain public cloud providers will let you collect performance data. It's like a one-time transfer is fine. It's the multiple transfers that actually have the hidden cost. So that's something to keep in mind too. They let you do it once, but once you do multiple times, it's a problem. So if you're doing it once a day, it's fine. It's when you keep transferring data back or large chunks of data that you run into problems. That's my experience. Okay. I think that's my last slide. Nope. Okay. Summarizing some metrics. Remember, the industry outside today, roughly 90% of companies are leveraging some type of public cloud. 40% have migrated applications back from the public cloud, and most companies move to the cloud because of costs, because the skyrocketing costs of on-prem. But remember, don't rush if you don't have to. Do what's best for your organization, and don't be afraid to challenge your organization to tell them why they should wait or why they should go to a public cloud provider versus another. And that is all. Any questions? Wow, you guys are a tough crowd. I thought I was at least entertaining you a little bit. Well, if you do have other questions because you're shy and you don't want to ask in the big group, that's okay. We will be at the booth, the second booth to the right. I think you've seen us there, most of the week. So feel free to come stop by and we'll answer any other questions you have.